Are you struggling to regain sustainability in your life and create a positive life stance? If so, listen in as courageous women share their empowering struggle of how they came through the trenches to restart and recreate a victorious life worth living. They took their power back. Learn the secrets of how they did it, and you can too. Welcome to the Real Heart Talk podcast and 360 Network for Women. And here's your host, Pamela Duran.
Hello, Real Heart Talk listeners. You are enough. We are excited today to have Doree O'Neill, the real Doree. I love it. She is here with us on Real Heart Talk, and she is going to share her struggle of wrestling with alcoholism and how she took her power back, created her best life, and now she is thriving. Welcome, Doree.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Yes, I'm happy that you had time to stop in and share with us. Just go ahead and give us a little bit of your background and tell us about yourself, what you love to do, where you live. Just give us some logistics.
All right, some logistics. I am from Georgia, if you cannot tell. I am actually born and raised in Georgia. I am from a little town called LaGrange. So yeah, I'm a Georgia peach, if you will. And I moved to Atlanta in my mid 20s and have been here. And I stayed. I loved it. When I got the opportunity to leave my hometown, I did, though I do miss it tremendously. I'm the oldest of five, and um, so I've always was considered Miss Bossy, and I think it kind of ties in well to my current life today. But today I'm married. I have two beautiful twin stepdaughters. They are going to be 19 in August. They just graduated last year. And what a pleasure it was for me to be a part of their life and a part of watching them blossom into beautiful women. It's truly amazing.
That is so wonderful, and congratulations on the graduation. And I just can't believe it. They're 19. It just seems like yesterday
Yeah.
that we were talking. I can't believe how time flies.
I know. It's so weird. They're away, and one just came home from college this weekend, and then she took off Monday morning, and we're like, wow, okay, well, there she goes again.
Well, I'm so happy for y'all. That is so great. And I appreciate you coming on and being so courageous and vulnerable to share, how you wrestled, your struggle, so that you can help others, our listeners, that may be going through the same struggle, being dependent on something else or even codependent, to try to make it day to day. So let's just dive into your story and just tell us. You can start wherever you want.
Wherever I want. Okay. Well, I will say that, one of the things I always tell people in the beginning is that I always felt like I didn't belong. From the moment I was a little bitty thing, I just felt weird, unusual, and like I didn't belong. And then as I started to get more into my teen years, I struggled with issues with my weight from the time I was 4 years old. And so I always felt less than and not pretty enough. And of course, people would say things to me, "Oh, you have such a pretty face." And and then there were other girls around me that were cheerleaders and thin, and so I always just felt less than. But the moment that I had my first drink at the age of 15, all of that disappeared just for a moment, and I wasn't feeling I felt courageous, and I felt like I could do anything and I could say whatever and be that daring person that I always wanted to be. So it continued through my teenage years. It wasn't, I wouldn't say I had not crossed a line, but I did like the way it made me feel. I lost a boyfriend or two over it, just because I would act out when I drank. But by the time I was in college was when it really became, I would say, an issue. And, a lot of people, when they think of having issues with alcohol or alcoholism, whatever you want to call it, they think of someone that drinks every day and someone that passes out every day, has to get up in the morning and have a drink, but that's not necessarily the case. Some people, I believe it does lead to that, but for myself, it was more of a, as soon as I took a drink, I couldn't stop. And in college, that became the theme. In fact, I would go out during school nights to study and end up going out drinking, and then the next day rolling into my finals from the night before wearing the same outfit and convincing myself that nobody knew. But the problem was that I always, when I drank to oblivion. And it didn't matter if I drank every day, I blacked out every time, just about. And so the guilt and shame and remorse that came with waking up the next morning and wondering what I did and said the night before was horrendous. It was just terrible. I would wait for the phone to ring for someone to fill me in on the clues of what had happened the night before. And as I got older, I ended up marrying someone who was similar, liked to drink like I did. And so we had a pretty good marriage in the beginning, but toward the end, you can imagine with drinking heavily and going out and talking to other people and being just more social with other people, there a rift. It was a
Mm.
big rift that started. And by the time we were almost our 8-year anniversary, our marriage just, I say it imploded and exploded. It was pretty dramatic. It's and a little scary. It ended in a restraining order. So um but that was in my mid to late 30s,
Mhm.
and we divorced in March. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. No, okay. I just wanted to go back a minute to when you were 15. Now, is this something that you started at home, or did your parents know? I mean, how
Mm,
did it, from your family and your siblings? You're the oldest, so
I'm the oldest. Yeah, I no, it was at a friend's house. There was not alcohol in my house. My family, we went to church, and we were Southern Baptist, and that was not something that we had in the house. But my friend down the street's parents had a full liquor cabinet, and we just went after it and filled it with water. I'm sure they were surprised
what?
later when they went to have a drink and it was not what was supposed to be in the bottle. Um, but I would stay there until I felt like I was able to fool my parents, I guess. But there was an incident when I was 15 where I went out and they, my friends, quote, air quotes, friends dropped me off at my dad's house intoxicated, like to the point where I could barely walk. And I walked in the house and walked into the wall. And I had gotten sick all over myself, and I had long hair and it was in my hair, and my stepmom, I mean, it was just had to take care of me. And I was so embarrassed the next morning because again, I couldn't remember what happened. I woke up in my parents' bed, my dad and stepmom's bed, and going, "Oh no." And then my dad came in and being the jokester that he was, tried to make a little joke, but I could see he was hurt. And later on, he actually cried and said that, he just, the fact that I was not in my frame of mind, that's what concerned him more than anything. That my faculties were not there for me to make good decisions. And I was afraid that I would be taken advantage of. And I think that that is what's really important, especially for young girls as well, to realize it does impair you to a point of where you can't take care of yourself. And that was what was the scariest thing I think for my dad at that moment was that I could have been taken advantage of and I wouldn't have known any different.
Mm, I'm sure that was maybe not a wake up moment yet, since you went from there on to college. But did
Mm-mm.
that slow you down, Annie? I mean, did that make you stop and think, or you still, pursued drinking?
I had some moments in my, I call it my drinking career, where I thought, I don't stop. I can't stop. And everybody would comment on, wow, you just like you had one, and then the next minute we knew that you were just like you were gone, and you had drank so much. And I started kind of cluing in, going, maybe I don't drink like other people. But part of the situation around drinking like this is that usually you surround yourself with like people. So they have a thing in AA that says that abnormal becomes normal because they drank like I did. No one can look at me and say, "Oh, look at what you're doing." But when they did, it kind of like struck a nerve a little bit because it was like, "Oh, well." Then I'd get offended. How dare you? You drink just like I do. So you can't say anything to me about what I'm doing. So little bits and pieces of that along the way. Um, but the more it progressed, the more when people would say things to me like I would have to apologize a lot because I would say so many mean things. And someone said to me, "That's it's okay, Doree. We know how you are when you're drinking." And so I'd become not fun Doree anymore, but tragic Doree that speaks and everybody feels sorry for her because she's just going to be drunk Doree and go at it, and then she'll come back and apologize later, and then the next weekend it'll be the same thing all over again. So I think that that was sort of when things started kind of cluing me in a little bit that something was not right. But the big turning point for me when I realized I really may have a problem was my marriage was falling apart. And I'm sitting at the bar. He's down at the other end of the bar. And I'm looking at my drink. And I said to myself, if I can just drink this and keep drinking this, then the night will go away. And I can just continue. So I compare it to like a lot of people, Groundhog Day, when you get in the cycle of where you're just getting through and just getting by and barely getting by. And that's when I realized at that point that, wait a minute, I'm talking to my drink to tell me that you're going to help me get through this, and the sooner you make me feel better, the sooner this will all be quote over, and this night will be over. And yeah, so that was sort of when some clues started happening, but it took a
Mhm.
while.
Oh, sounds like I know my dad was an alcoholic. So growing up like that, we hated the weekend. And, we never knew till we got older why my mother sent us away. We went,
Hmm.
and practically lived with my grandmother every weekend, and then the summer we spent a lot of time there. But until we got older, I never knew it was because, my dad drinking. And of course, he overcame it when I was like 15, just in time for me to be 15, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, and even then, you're talking about the cycle that you married, someone like that. I don't want to say everybody marries somebody like their dad, but I did. He was recovering when I met him, but then he didn't stay that way. And so it was a very domestic violence situation. So I'm glad that I escaped that, as well. And
Yeah.
one thing I want to ask you about though is your blackouts. Do you think that had any health concerns? I mean, does it have any today? I'm just curious.
I think the biggest concern with a blackout is that you don't even know you're in one.
Oh,
Um, and so you don't even know. So you're impaired to that degree, and you're driving a car, or you're doing something that you should not be probably doing. And from my perspective, the health repercussions were high blood pressure. My weight, of course, continued to blossom because of the calories in the drinking, but my liver started to have little, like when I go to the doctor, it we get like your liver enzymes had a little spike in them today. So it was more of that type of thing, but the blood pressure was I was on blood pressure medicine by the time I was 30
wow.
because of of drinking and I smoked cigarettes too. The two went hand in hand. So it was really a recipe of self destruction for sure.
So you're sitting at the bar, you're at both ends, you realize this is your turning point. What happens? Tell us.
I continued going. And I got the divorce, and it wasn't until I ended up dating someone and got into a domestic violence situation myself that I
Mhm.
realized this is not the person that I wanted to be when I grew up. When I grew up, I wanted to be a fashion designer living in Paris. And
I love it.
it was such a big dream. And somewhere along the way, things just kind of change. But I looked at myself and I went, this is not the person I want to be. I don't want to be. I was living with an addict who was being physically abusive, mentally abusive, and also spending money and taking my money, and it just was really a hard situation. So I actually went to a therapist. I said I've got to see a therapist, and I went to her, and she was really amazing. She looked at me and said, I said, I think I'm going crazy. I think I'm having a nervous breakdown. And she said, well, we don't call it that anymore, but let's dive into it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. She never said this, but this is what we call it. But I really didn't feel in my mind. But I think because my connection to my spirit was broken, that when you have that kind of break of your spirit and your soul, where there's just not a connection anymore to your body or to your mind, you feel like you're actually losing your mind because
Mhm.
it's just there's no connection with anything. You separate from your body. It's just it's a very hard time. And I said, I feel like a shell of a person. I don't feel like I am connecting at all with anybody anymore. And she said, let me ask you some questions. And she pulled out the "Are you an alcoholic?" sheet. I didn't know what it was, but she started asking me questions, and she was like, "Do you black out?" And I said, "Who doesn't?" And she said, "Well, to be honest, nobody, except for people that have could potentially have issues." And then she went down the rest of the list and just said, "Doree, until you tackle your issue with alcohol," and she didn't call me an alcoholic or anything. She just said, "Until you tackle this, I can't help you with anything else." Because and this is the way I describe it to my clients as well now. It's like building a house on sand. And if you want a really good foundation, you find good land that's solid and going to support a house. So when there's addiction at the base of everything you're trying to build, it's just sinking. And it may not take days, it could take years, but it's bound to sink. And so for me, that was that moment. And I just was like, I am so desperate to change my situation and to live that I just said, I'll do whatever you say. And she said, okay, let's get going. And it started putting me in contact with a recovery center who put me in an AA group and really started teaching me the fundamentals of what it was like to be sober. And I clung to it because I
Mhm.
knew that my my house my ship was sinking, and my life was actually starting to be in danger, either by the hands of somebody else or by my own. And I knew that it was time to save my life. And I chose me and to save my life.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad you chose you. I mean, I can see, I don't know how long ago that was. I mean, how long was your journey like once you started here? Because you're so beautiful. You're such a beautiful soul. You help so many people today. So we're going to talk about that too. But, just getting there, how long was your journey? How many years?
My sobriety date is October 30th, 2012. So I'll be 12 years this year.
That is
So
so, congratulations.
thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. So talking about that, I mean, I know you've had some great things come into your life. You're remarried now to the love of your life, right? Tell us about that.
One of the things I realized getting sober was that after I got sober, I had to work on how I felt about myself. And one of the things I realized the common denominator was with all the men before was me. And they were a direct reflection of how I felt about myself. And so in order for me to change the type of person I was attracting, I had to change how I felt about me and feel like I deserved something that was different. Not I won't say better because I'm not going to say that I'm better than those, the people that I've dated in the past. Just different. I wanted something different out of my life. And when it came to meeting my husband, I wasn't looking. And I know everybody says that you're not looking for it, and there it is. And the moment I met him, felt like for the first time in my entire life, I could be myself with a man and be in the company of a man and make jokes. And I have a very weird sense of humor. So to be able to laugh and joke and dance and act silly. And one of my favorite memories is we're in Coles and we're there with one of his daughters. I think she must have been 13 at the time. And a song was playing on the radio in Coles, and Ken and I just started dancing in the middle of Coles and embarrassed her to no end, which made it even better. But being able to be with someone that makes you feel, or actually, he didn't make me feel that way. I already felt like I was home, and having that feeling just made it that much easier for us to just. It was easy. It was the first time in my life being in a relationship was easy, and then having those girls was just icing on the cake because one of my biggest regrets when I got sober was I never had children, which I'm glad I didn't because I probably wouldn't have been a very good mother. But being able to have the honor of being a stepmom, which is a whole different ball of wax for those who are stepmoms or step parents, they'll get what I'm saying. It's different, but it's special, really special.
Yeah. And you are just a special person for them. And I love that 12 years. So, everyone listening, hear what we're saying. This is not overnight. You can't just
Mm.
thing overnight. You can't just fix it overnight. It is going to take time, and that's okay. So
Hmm.
learn to love yourself. I don't know if you've ever done the Mirror Works book, but that is a great book. If anybody listening needs to fall back in love with themselves, that book is beautiful. It would really help. But I love that you love yourself now and that you can be free from that addiction. I mean, I know what my dad said. He said it's a daily, thing. And I don't know if that
Yes.
is the way it is for you. I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
In the beginning, absolutely. Everybody says you get a daily reprieve and that's it. But you really think about it in the whole scheme of life, that's all we're not even promised a full day. We're not even promised a moment by moment. But being able to say in this moment, I choose to to do the things that are for my well-being. I'm choosing the things that lift me up rather than put me down. And I know for me, alcohol is something that just put me down. It like, rubs my face in it. And I really am just I know that if I have one drink, it'll be game over. And I'm not ready for the game over. So day by day, yeah. And then, the days kind of sow themselves into weeks and years but I never forget. That's the key. A lot of people can get sober or quit whatever it is their addiction is and forget about where they've come from and forget about what it was like. Because if you forget that, then your mind has a way of making it, well, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't, it wasn't too terrible. It wasn't that fun. And you start thinking about it that way. They call it romancing the drink. And And that can happen so easily with the mind. I mean, I think about that with chocolate cake, right? Like, I know, like, I don't need chocolate cake. I don't need it. I don't need it. But, I look at it and go, ooh, that looks good. And
Yeah.
man, that would taste good. And your mouth can start watering because you're thinking about it. That's how powerful the mind is. And it's just important to remember not live in it daily. Me telling my story like I'm telling you today, I don't think about the story every day. I just don't want to go back there to that degree. But I do remind myself that the beautiful life I have and that I wouldn't trade it for anything. And for me, drinking means trading it all in. And that's not something I'm willing to gamble.
I love that. I love it. So there is hope for our listeners. If you are going through any type of addiction, alcoholism, you have hope. So don't give up. Listen to the podcast and get reach out, get help. The only reason I feel like a lot of times is you're stuck is you don't reach out or you think you don't deserve it or you're just beating yourself up. So you can just tell a friend or really reach out for help. People are there to help you. Always help there to help you. I feel like that. Okay.
Absolutely. There's so many people that's what they want. That's it helps them to stay sober, helping other people stay sober. So it works both ways.
Yes, no, that's great. And that's a great segue into what you're doing today. Share with us.
So I am a transformation coach and a certified hypnotherapist. Talking about mindset, I one of the things I realize is how much a thought can become a thing, and it can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And really specialize in stress and anxiety and professionals, but also young adults. I have had more young adults lately as clients than you would not believe. It has
Mm.
really become an issue. They're struggling right now. There's so many different things. They grew up on social media like we haven't grown up on. And all of the stressors of finding a job, and especially in this economy, and all of the different things that are going on in their lives, they're really, really struggling emotionally and just lost. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help them find the way, have a plan, but really just connect with themselves and learn tools and techniques to stay grounded, stay present, and really look for all of the beautiful things in life and unlock their full potential so they can just go for it.
That is beautiful. Now, what is one technique that you can share with our audience that could like have an immediate effect to help them if they're anxious or an anxiety or just relieve stress?
So one of the things that I tell my clients is you break the train of thought. Usually what happens with stress or anxiety, I call it the stress and anxiety avalanche. And it starts out as a snowball that just grows momentum and speed until it becomes like this just thing coming down on top of you. But being able to break the train of thought when the thoughts are happening, and it can be as simple as, and I know this sounds, everybody goes, oh my gosh, I've already heard all this, breathing, taking a nice deep breath. Breathing actually helps to slow the nervous system. It helps to give oxygen to the brain, which is clarity. So, and when I'm talking about taking a deep breath, I'm talking about taking a deep breath where you poke your stomach out when you breathe in, like a baby, when babies breathe. So, breathing in and then just holding it for a moment and then releasing it, and then releasing it slowly, and then holding at the bottom when it's all out for just a moment. And one of the things I tell people when they're breathing, if you really think about it, when you exhale, your shoulders actually drop a little bit. And that's just your body just going, whew. So anytime you're train of thought, you can do that. The other thing is rubbing two fingers together. And that sounds, again, you have your tools with you. Your body is built to help you function in stressful situations. So being able to rub two fingers together and really feeling what it feels like with those two fingers rubbing together, the friction, the temperature, and Can you feel the ridges of your fingers and
Mm,
feeling that sensation? And now your mind is not thinking about all the other things that are going on. It's focused, and people can't see me on the podcast, but I got my two fingers, but my thoughts are now focused between my two fingers rubbing together. And it's
mm,
broke the train of thought. And then what I can do is then go back and go, all right, now that I'm in a calmer state, I have my clarity because I've been breathing. Now let's analyze what I was thinking about. And the biggest thing, is it true?
mm,
Is it true? And 99% of the time, it's something that your mind has like grabbed a memory of and went, "Yep, told you. That's exactly what it is." And it has ignored all of thousands other memories that are
mm.
to the contrary. So being able to just question it and go, "Is it true? Is what I'm thinking? Am I really going to be?" I don't know. One of my big things for a long time, especially when I was drinking, was homeless. Am I
Mm.
ever going to be homeless? And I always tell my friends, I'm like, as long as I've got good friends who love me and I don't treat them poorly, I'll never be homeless. So that's a lie when that thought comes through. It's not the truth.
Yeah, I love that. So those are great techniques. Yes, breathing. I love breath work, breathing. Even when I do my prayer and meditation, you breathe different when you're in your meditation. I mean, seriously, I can feel it all the way down to my toes. I mean, it's like my legs will be,
Yes.
but when I do that breath work during that time of just downtime, it really impacts my whole body. And then I've never heard about rubbing the fingers together, even though I do that. So
Hmm.
that's a suggestion. And yes, you do not, Ed Milet says, you don't have to believe everything your brain tells you. And that is the truth because, like you said, it makes up stuff. Is it
It does.
true? That's a simple question to ask. Is it true? Well, this has been so great. So, what kind of programs or webinars or any masterclass, anything you have coming up, or any books that you've written that people can purchase? Tell us.
I do have my book that I wrote back in 2019. I'm contemplating another book, but my book is How I Went from a Hot Mess to a Daring Badass. It's on Amazon and it's still there for purchase. I have a Facebook group where I give tips all throughout the week. I pick a different topic. Last week was about sleep and how to get a better night's sleep because sleep does impact stress, anxiety, and those thoughts that we have. So, any little tips that I can give on that. And yeah, I'm putting together a couple of other things in the near future. But if anyone's interested in talking to me, they can reach me and you can join the Facebook group. They can reach out to me. I offer complimentary sessions um, for to hour-long session to just kind of talk a little bit about what's going on and see if we're a good fit.
That sounds good. Now, what is the name of your Facebook group?
My Facebook group is st- Stay Calm, Cool, and Collected, but you can find it under Stress and Anxiety Management. And look and just search for me or reach out to me on Facebook and I'll add you to the group as well.
Okay, that sounds great. And they just look up Doree O'Neill or the real Doree.
Doree O'Neill. Doree O'Neill. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I'll include that in our show notes as well. But it has been just a joy to have you here with us today, Doree, and to share how you took your power back and how you're thriving today. You're definitely an example of not giving up, of persevering through the struggle and knowing that there's hope and that there's something better out there and that you deserve it and you're worthy and you're worth it.
We all are. We all are. Yes.
Well, thank you again. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and stay tuned for our next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the 360 Network for Women and Real Heart Talk podcast. We're so happy you could join and hope you stay tuned for the next episode.